Okay, if anybody's having trouble with your video feed, refresh your browser, as our highly talented administrator has already asked us to do. And if you have any questions, now's a good time to start. So feel free. We had some outstanding questions last time, especially from Dan. By the way, welcome, Dan. We have a group that meets here in my hometown, and normally I'm too occupied to go, but I went tonight, and it's a hoot. I forget sometimes what it's like to be in a live group. They've been meeting for several months now, and they've become quite accomplished at telling the truth about themselves. And it's fun to listen to them describe how their lives have changed. One couple was describing how much more patient they are with each other. One lady is, probably 70-something years old, and she just weeps with gratitude at how much she's learned about real love and how it's changing the way she interacts with her adult children. So we're never too late, never too old to learn how to love the people around us and make our lives happier. Another couple was describing how they have changed the way that they interact with their children, which is just delightful. One father was describing an interaction with his daughter where she had done some thing, acted her age, and he became impatient with her and barked at her a little bit, and 30 minutes or so later he said to her, that wasn't your fault. I was just being impatient and selfish and stupid. And she said, that's okay, Dad. But admitting a fault like that is just huge, because normally when we become impatient with our kids like that, we inflict terrible wounds, because what they hear is, I don't love you. And by him saying to her, it wasn't about you, it was about me. What a loving thing for him to do, to say, don't worry about that. My mistake. You're not an idiot. I still love you. It does so many things for a child. Removes the wound, teaches a child that it's okay to say that you make a mistake, that mistakes are no big deal. He just provides her a wonderful example of learning and growing. And these two parents are just thrilled beyond speech that they're learning this while their children are young, instead of like most of us do when our children are much older. So pretty cool. Here's a question. I went through a bad marriage and divorce where she was very manipulative and cruel. I have such a hard time with anger and resentment. Please tell me how I am wrong. Well, first let's deal with her behavior. I have no doubt that you're right when you say that she was manipulative and cruel. The people around us often are. And it's very, very important that we get this point. So listen carefully. The single most important gift that we have in this life, the single most important right, is the right to make our own choices. And it's from the right to make our own choices that we learn, that we grow, that we gain the capacity to be happy. If you couldn't make your own choices, is there any way in this wide world that you could be happy? No. So it's indispensable and incredibly cool that you get to make your own choices. The price that you pay for being able to make your own choices in this life is that everybody around you gets to make theirs. If we understood just what I just said right there, we'd never be angry at another human being again the rest of our lives. The price you pay for living in a world where you get to make your choices is that everybody else gets to make theirs, including their stupid choices, including their unkind ones, their manipulative ones, their cruel ones, including your ex-wife. The only way that I can possibly learn to be loving is to first make choices that are unloving. And as I make unloving choices and I see the consequences of being unloving, then gradually I learn the benefits of being loving. How else could I possibly learn? We learn by making mistakes. We learn to hit a baseball by missing it. We learn to sink a basketball by missing. It's how we learn everything. You learn to play the right notes on a piano by playing the wrong notes and so on. And so we learn to be loving by doing a lot of unloving things. There is no other way I could learn to be loving than that. And there's no way that I can learn to be loving and in the process do unloving things without affecting you, or at least the people around me. If not you personally, you may not be around me. So we can't learn without having a negative effect on the people around us. And your ex-wife was in the process of learning to be loving. Now, I realize that it may appear that she didn't learn a dang thing, but some of us take a lot longer than others. Some of us, in fact, get to practice learning to be loving and make mistakes and maybe not even make progress our entire lives. But the point is, we still have to be able to make the choices. So the first step in overcoming your anger against your ex-wife for the things that she did is that it was just part of learning. It's the price you pay for living in a world where you get to make your choices. Second part is this, and this is really simple. You want to be happy or not? Our entire purpose in life is to be happy. And anything that contributes to feeling loved, loving, and happy is therefore right, because it contributes to our primary purpose in being alive. Anything that detracts from our whole purpose in being alive, anything that detracts from our feeling loved, loving, and happy, is therefore wrong, stupid, doesn't work. And so that's why, no matter what anybody else does to me, if I'm angry in response, sure, they may be wrong. I could spend all year proving they're wrong. If I'm angry, I'm not happy, and I'm not loving. And anything that's not happy and not loving is not part of the natural order of the universe. It's not how things are supposed to be. It is wrong. Not wrong like we're going to send you to hell wrong. Wrong like inappropriate, unproductive, doesn't work. So that's what I mean by wrong. If you have more questions about that, keep it up. But that's how we're always wrong when we're angry. Here's a questioner who says, I was sharing my truth the other day about how sometimes I seem to be taken over by fear of the most horrible, terrifying things happening to my children. I was relieved to find out that I'm not the only person on the planet that experiences this fear. No, you're not. The fear has decreased significantly since I have been practicing real love, but it still crops up at the most unexpected moments. Where does this fear come from? What can I do to eliminate it altogether? Oh, where the fear comes from is easy. What we all want, more than anything else, is to feel unconditionally loved. And if we can't have that, then we go for imitation love. So, praise, power, pleasure, safety. And the one thing, we can't always guarantee that our children will get praised. We can't always guarantee that they'll have lives filled with power or pleasure. But one thing that as parents we're pretty sure we can guarantee for our children is safety. And you can't. You can't guarantee that your children won't be injured, sick, attacked, whatever. Those things are going to happen. But I'm here to tell you that if our children feel unconditionally loved, the pain of anything physical that might happen to them is relatively insignificant. And that the worst thing that we could do to our children is to fill their lives with fear that something terrible is going to happen. For example, I know parents who, everywhere they go, fill their children with fear that they're going to be abducted, that they're going to be sexually molested, that they're going to... Those parents cause their children more harm than a molester would. You think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. One of my children, when that child was very young, was sexually molested. And we just loved the child. Explained to the child that adults do strange and stupid and crazy things when they're empty and afraid. Saw to it that that adult got some counseling and so on, did what was appropriate there. That's not important in this case. But simply unconditionally loved the child. That's all the child wants. And if a child knows that in the process of being unconditionally loved, bad stuff happens, they're okay. Introduce them to the fact that in life there will be pain. But if we make them afraid of pain, their fear will be far more harmful than the pain itself. Making sense? Here's someone who says, I was in a real love group last night where the speaker started by saying, I'm very vulnerable and I'm not sure that I want feedback on this, and talked about the grief that she was experiencing. The listener said, why are you playing on the field of death? And it sounded unloving. Is it appropriate to direct our questions to someone specific in a group to ensure a more experienced response? I wasn't there, and so it's hard to know exactly whether that was an appropriate response, but you could perhaps tell from my laughter that I thought that was maybe a little inappropriate. If somebody says, I'm feeling vulnerable, and I'm not sure I want feedback on that, what is it that they're saying? All they're really saying is, I'm feeling afraid. That's it. And they're dying for you to help them see what it is that they're afraid of. People almost never can respond meaningfully to why questions. Does this make sense? Because when you say why, you're asking them to figure out something when they already don't know why. So, or they wouldn't be bringing it up. If they understood the why, it wouldn't be a mystery. So when somebody says, I'm vulnerable and I'm not sure I want feedback, then the next appropriate question would be, it sounds as though you feel afraid. Do you know what you're feeling afraid of? And if they don't know what they're feeling afraid of, the answer is almost invariably that they're afraid of not feeling loved. And so you might even go a step further and say, if you don't want any further conversation about this, you just say so, because we don't have to take it any further than you'd like it to go. But most of the time when people are afraid, they're afraid of not feeling loved. So when I say that, does that ring a bell with you? Does it resonate with you when I say afraid of feeling loved? And can you identify who it is you're afraid of not feeling loved by? Now you've opened the door up for them to talk about their fears. Rather than getting into technical discussions about field of death and labeling the exact getting and protecting behavior, it's usually far too technical. Does that answer your question? If it doesn't, keep asking. Also, please keep letting us know if you're having any trouble at all with video or audio. Otherwise, we don't know. Here's one person saying, will you share about OCD and how real love can help this difficult health condition? I assume you're talking about obsessive compulsive disorder, I hope. People who are obsessive compulsives are simply afraid, and they order their world, they establish patterns in their world to get some sense of control over their world. That's all it's about. OCD is about control. And the more loved they feel, the less control they need. OCDs feel powerless, and their behavior is designed to bring power back into their lives. All of that only makes sense in the absence of real love. So if you love somebody like that, very often you can eliminate their feelings of OCD, although I've got to tell you that it's also been discovered that there is very likely some actual physiologic wiring component to OCD, And some of those people actually become markedly improved on medication. And if somebody doesn't improve significantly within a few months of practicing real love, I strongly suggest that they go see a psychiatrist and get a medication prescribed. If I'm able to love in the face of hate, doesn't that mean that, I like this question, that they, whoever it is hateful, that they get off without consequences and therefore do not learn from their behavior? Since when they gave negative, they get positive in return. That is such a seductive reasoning. And the entire world uses that reasoning. So I'm not making fun of it. It's what the whole world does. It's the basis of the phrase, I'm going to teach him a lesson. Because we can't let people get away with stuff. And you know, if I were the eternal holder of the scales of justice, if the entire universe depended on me balancing the scales, then I guess there would be a reason for me to see to it that they didn't get away with things. But there isn't. I'm not the holder of the scales. And it turns out that if somebody is being hateful, why are they being hateful? Think. People only behave hatefully because they don't feel loved. And so rather than ask the question, how can I let them get away with it? A way more appropriate question would be, what can I do to address the root cause of their hatred? Which is to love them. And I have now seen this over and over again. I'm not speaking from a theoretical standpoint. I've seen people be hateful toward me, and as I love them, their hate just vanishes. It's like a miracle. Now, I'm not saying that if somebody, for example, kills your wife, that you should just say, oh, that's okay. I mean, people often need to suffer natural consequences for their behavior. They may need to go to prison and so on. But to respond to hate with hate fills the world with just more hate, and it builds exponentially. So short of committing some actual civil crimes, you know, where consequences really need to be imposed, I don't care what people get away with anymore. I don't care. It doesn't matter anymore. I would rather do my little part to fill the world with real love, which is going to do more to eliminate the hateful behaviors than anything that I would ever do to control people, because that never works. What about the fear that I experience as a mother? For example, the other day, I was in a parking lot putting my 9-month-old daughter in the car. On the other side of the car, my 4-year-old slipped while I was besieged by fears about what might have happened if I had put the baby down on the ground and crawled away and got squashed by another car. Totally unrealistic and not likely to happen, but the fear arose anyway. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that when we don't feel sufficient unconditional love in our lives, our fears of everything else are heightened. No kidding. We're more afraid of money matters. We're more afraid of our physical concerns. We're more afraid of our health. We're more afraid of what might happen to our kids, and so on. You look, for example, at a mother who does not feel unconditionally loved, and a child falls down, for example, and skins his knee. That mother just goes crazy. Oh. And as soon as the mother gets that anxious, frightened look on her face, what do you think the child's going to do? Scream, of course. Whereas when a mother does feel unconditionally loved, and a child falls and injures himself or herself, it's like, it's no big deal. And with that feeling of peace and calm and quiet power, how do you think the child responds? The child sees that it's just really no big deal. When we feel loved and loving, everything becomes calmer. My wife was talking to my daughter the other day on the phone, and we have she's raising two of our grandkids, and the 5-year-old, they keep getting older, so I forget, but I think he's 5. The 5-year-old came running up to his mom while she was talking to my wife and said, Megan, his sister, hit me. And then he said, but I hit her first. In a loving household, you don't even need to lie. So he was telling his mother, Megan hit me, but well, to be truthful, I hit her first. And his mother said to him, so do we hit in our household? Does anybody ever hit? And he said, no, we don't. And so they went through what he could say to his sister next time, instead of hitting her, and they worked it out. And after they had calmly worked it out and everybody was just all happy, his sister had been watching this. She thought it was so wonderful. She came in and she said, we were hitting. She wanted to participate in this wonderful little loving conversation. In the presence of love, everything just flows. Whereas without love, how would that conversation have gone? Well, he hit me. It just would have gone on and on. There would have been mutual accusations, and he hit me first, and she hit me harder. In the presence of love, everything becomes easier. So that's the thing to remember. Get the love rather than worry about the details of any individual event. Last week, remember, we talked about, there was a mother who said that her child poured too much olive oil on his plate, I believe, in preparation for use for the bread. So she'd been having a discussion with her son who was pouring too much olive oil for use with his bread, and she was annoyed that he was using too much oil, and the dad was saying, oh, just leave it alone. Here we are. This week, it was sour cream instead of olive oil. These creative children. Next week, it'll be tomato juice. I kept quiet when my son used 8 ounces on his potato. Yet it felt so wrong to let him. I fear for his health. I later attempted to teach him regarding something. Said S. I don't know. Let me reassure you. I promise you, if you unconditionally love a child and teach them, they will get it. What we do is we opt for the faster results, but not the longer term better ones. So if I've got a child who's using too much sour cream on his potatoes, I will get faster results if I reach over, scoop the sour cream off the potato, put it back in the container, scream at the child, be impatient, and say you're using too much sour cream. I will, for a fact, save 4 ounces of sour cream faster. True. But if I want to teach the child to be wise, independent, to feel that I love the child, to learn to make his or her own choices, that can only be done by showing absolutely no impatience whatever. Let the kid slop 8 ounces on the potato, let him choke down the sour cream, and then at a later time, you talk about the benefits of using something wisely. And as you repeatedly teach them without being irritated, we don't trust the fact that our children are not absolutely retarded. We don't. And each time we pound into them something and we say, don't, and stop it, I promise you, that kid hears, you are so stupid, I have to control you. You are such a moron that if I weren't here to hold your left hand in your right hand, you wouldn't know what to do with either one. You couldn't find your butt with both hands. And these kids hear those messages. We want to see short-term results. The long-term results are worth it. So that's going to involve making mistakes. Let them. That doesn't mean let them make every mistake, and it doesn't mean let them make mistakes forever. You keep teaching. And like I was saying last week, if he continues to pour 8 ounces of sour cream on his food, at some point you say, everybody else gets to use the sour cream except for you. You have to buy your own. Because you use so much that apparently you don't understand this principle, and so you're going to have to buy your own supply with no irritation. But you're going to teach this principle only in a loving way, not by controlling. If any of this isn't plain, keep asking, because this is critical, and your child will grow up to be independent, happier, everything will be better. Does progress in real love increase with the more contact that we have with other loving people? Would someone in a real love group progress more swiftly than someone with only 2 or so contacts over the phone? And is personal contact better than on the phone? I have seen people make some rather remarkable progress with only phone contact. I'm going to only speak generally. As a rule, when people can participate in a live group where there are people that they can sit with face to face, the progress on the whole, this is after observing thousands of people do this, is roughly 4 to 5 times faster. I'm not kidding at all. The people who have live groups do way better, but that doesn't mean you have to have one. I just took a man tonight who had never been to a group. Well, this was his second, but we took him to a live group. He'd participated in a number of phone conversations. He'd watched the DVDs. He's read the Real Love book 6 times. He's been in at least 50 phone calls. And last week he went to his first Real Love group, and this week he went to his second, and he said, holy smokes. He said the difference in being in a live group is phenomenal. And he really iterates what many other people have said. So I really strongly anticipate a live group. Now, what if you're in a place where there isn't a group? Form one. Now, how do you do that? You say to a friend, this book has just been revolutionary for me. It's just been cool. Would you be interested in reading this book? I mean, we share other books. If you find 1 or 2, even 2 people who show an interest in the Real Love book, usually you can then say, would you like to get together on Tuesday and we'll talk about the book? Just once. If they like it, you meet the next Tuesday. It's pretty impossible to talk about the book without saying, you know, I do that. And the minute you say, I do that, you're in a Real Love group. So that's how it's done. So the more contact that you can make, absolutely the better. And the people who dive in and make daily contact, phone contact, personal contact, their lives change pretty quickly. I get asked all the time, how long does it take for real love to change your life? And the answer, always. How many contacts do you want to make with loving people? In fact, I'm pretty sure it's up. I'll have to ask my administrator. But if you'll go to the blog, the latest blog, which is about building a fire, the very latest blog that just went up yesterday or today, it will answer the question you just asked better than what I just did. Talks all about the value of being around people who are experienced with real love. It's called We Really Need Each Other, I believe. More and more I'm putting blogs up every 3 or 4 days, so I recommend you keep checking those out. We're trying to keep them current. One questioner has said that I can see how I'm into habits of thinking that I need to change, and this is very hard for me. Yeah, I'll bet. We have been trained by our parents, teachers, and others to think in a certain way. And we were trained from the time we were little children. So when a child is 4 years old, now look at how we're trained. When a 4-year-old sees a parent interact with the world in a certain way, For example, Dan is saying, I think that I must meet hate with hate to protect myself. I think I have to be stronger than the other person. Where did you learn that? As a child. So here's a 4-year-old, and he's watching his father interact with somebody. And somebody interacts with his father and is aggressive or attacking. And he sees the father lash out at the person who attacked him. What did the 4-year-old just learn? You meet hate with hate. You protect yourself with more anger and by being bigger than the other person. The 4-year-old accepts that as an absolute axiom, as a fact, as a truth. It's not just an alternative. What 4-year-old is going to say to his father, now, Dad, isn't there another way that you could have approached that situation? There isn't a chance in the world any 4-year-old is going to question that. And so, Dan, when you say it's difficult to change your habits of thinking, gee, no kidding. Because you receive them from essentially God. Is that clear? Our parents aren't God-like. They are God. When our parents say, this is how you respond to the world, we accept it absolutely as though it came down from the heavens. That's how wholeheartedly and unquestioningly we accept it. But this business of responding hate with hate, have you, well, let me just ask you, when was the last time you ever saw that work out? It never does. Never, ever does. And yet we keep doing it because that's what we saw everybody else do. What we're teaching people here in Real Love, and what you'll begin to see the more you do it, is that the more loving you are, the more your love will change the complete attitude of an entire room. I've entered a room where people were just furious at each other, where the attitude of the room was just pure contention, and where simply by being calm and loving, the entire atmosphere of the room changes. Make sense? We think might has to fight might. Oh, no, no. Love dissolves all. Love is the greatest power. And we can never know that until we do it. I was visiting a friend recently, and he hadn't visited his parents in something like 3 or 4 years. The antagonism between him and his parents was just palpable. He wasn't speaking to them. They weren't speaking to him. They were spreading gossip about him. It was just a contest. And he said, and I visited him. He lives several thousand miles away, literally. And as I was visiting him, he said, "Would you come with me while I visit my parents?" I said, "Sure." So I went with him over to his parents' home. And as we walked into the home, I just embraced his parents and told them how glad I was to see them. I just loved them while I was loving him. Within 2 minutes, she turned to me and she said, "How come he doesn't come over here to visit us?" And I said, "Oh, he's just learning to be loving. He's just still stupid." And he started to chuckle. I just loved him the way he was, because he's still learning to be loving. And we're all stupid. That applies to all of us. Didn't attack her in any way, didn't defend him, didn't criticize her. Just by loving everybody in the room at the same time, the atmosphere went from contentious and accusing to just calm. Like that. Whereas, what if I'd fought her? What if I'd said, "What do you mean him? The reason he doesn't contact you is because you've been such a witch." What if I'd done that? What if I had fought her hatred with hatred of my own, or defended my friend? That would have been a tempting thing to do. We'd have been right straight down in the toilet, wouldn't we? Love melts monsters. And until we trust that, we're going to keep fighting hate with hate, and what do we end up with? Twice the hate, or actually often more than twice the hate. And this questioner went on to say, everything is a contest, and I don't even think about happiness. It's all about ego and macho behavior, almost like in prison, where you're in danger if you don't show everybody that you can protect yourself. I got to share with you, Dan, a really interesting thing. I've worked now with a lot of people, in prison. And I've learned that even in prison, I've been teaching men to show love instead of hate. And it's been very disarming to the other prisoners. They're so used to seeing hate against hate that when a man just says, I'm not interested in fighting you, and just responds in a loving but not weak way. Love isn't weak. Love is a powerful choice. I choose not to fight you. I choose to discuss this. I choose to either give you what you want or not give you what you want. But I'm not a hostage to you. Love is a powerful choice, and it works even in prison. Works everywhere. Here's a questioner that says, anything you might suggest that I say? Wait a minute, I think I missed something. Yeah, I did. I've been to a few real love meetings where someone jumps into teaching before establishing a loving trust. I've gotten to the point where I don't feel safe sharing something really vulnerable. Yeah, darn it. Is there anything you might suggest that I say before I share my vulnerability that will help people remember that I want love more than teaching to begin with? Yes. So what you can say is, you can share what you're saying, and if somebody starts to interrupt you, this is really simple. I do this without hesitation when I'm speaking. You're talking along, and you get one of these people who leaps in to fix you. They love to do that. It's about power for them. And so you're talking along, and they leap in, and you just casually raise your hand and say, would it be all right if I finish this before I get any comments? And that will stop 99% of people from speaking. And then when you're done speaking, you say, now, what I'm looking for here, rather than a solution, I guess what I'm really looking for is more understanding and acceptance. So I realize that sounds maybe a little prescriptive, but that's what I need. And so you tell people that. That's okay to do. And then you need to understand that if somebody does try to fix you, control you, teach you, everybody makes mistakes. And like we said at the top of the hour, the price we pay for living in a world where we make our own choices and mistakes is that everybody else gets to make theirs too. So sometimes when you speak, you may have to go through one or two people who bumble and screw up and don't understand you before you run across somebody who does. So let's say that you speak and you're vulnerable and somebody tries to fix you and you say, thank you, I guess I'm still feeling like I need something. I'm still feeling like I need to feel a little more acceptance. Tell them what you need. Because we often expect people to read our minds and then we feel unfulfilled. So don't hesitate. That doesn't mean you'll get it, but gosh, don't hesitate to tell them what you do need and what you don't need. Nothing wrong with that at all. When a child has a tantrum, unhappy about not being able to play with a friend, and damages something, do you suggest a consequence in addition to a child paying for the broken item? Like, for example, miss a party? No, not really. They'll learn. For example, in our household, if a child has a tantrum, what we say is, do you see anybody else out here, you know, like in the living room, do you see anybody else out here who's screaming and kicking? No. Well, see, everybody who's out here talking to each other is speaking in a normal voice, and we're all doing that so we can hear each other. You explain it sensibly. If someone is screaming, no one can understand. Nobody can hear. So it's not a punishment for having a tantrum. Do you see? You can have a tantrum all you want, but you can't have it here. So the punishment, it's not a punishment. The consequence of a tantrum is you have to go be actually, you don't care if you're by yourself. You just have to be away from here because we can't hear. That's all. Now, how long do they have to be away? Until they quit. There's none of this. You have to be gone 1 minute for every year you're alive, or, nah, that's silly. The point is, if As soon as they catch on that they can't scream and be with civilized human beings, then they can be back with you. Big deal. And if that means they're halfway down the hall and catch on 10 seconds later, who cares? Let them come back. So that's one consequence, is they can't be where other people are speaking because they're too disruptive. And the other one is, if they break something, oh, well, you'll have to either fix that or repair it, or if it's their thing, do without it, or, you know, whatever a natural consequence of that is. It's just natural consequences. You don't get excited about it. And they very soon learn, as is the purpose of all consequences, that making the wrong choice is simply far more inconvenient to them than making the right one. And when they discover that consistently, they go, I don't want to do this again because it was just stinking inconvenient. You know? We've taught children as young as 11 months. You don't swipe the food off your little tray on the high chair because then you have to clean it up. And they learn, I hate that. So they quit knocking the food off the high chair. Well, hello there, Tina, darling. I haven't seen Tina here before. Good to have you. Last week I wrote about struggling with my husband and feeling like I could not get my head above water. And I did what you recommended, and I'm doing better. Wow. I called 6 people a day, so are you willing to talk more about what you did? Excellent. She is already. I have a coach. I'm on chapter 5 of the victim book. My husband is the same, but he's having very little negative impact on me, and I feel so loving. Sweetie, see, you're already getting to the Hall of Fame. This is what it's all about. We can never count on other people to change. I'll be happier when my husband blank. I wish my wife would. You can do that forever. It's all about us. And in this particular woman's case, she's talking about it here, so I'm assuming I can talk about it some more. If I'm wrong, then about halfway through she'll type scream, stop. Is that, you know, her husband was having an increasingly negative effect on her because, you know, here she's working at telling the truth, she's working at feeling more loved, and frankly, he's just going, I don't care. He's really not involved in real love and suffers under the delusion that he's a really happy guy when he's not. And it was really dragging her down. So, you know, my suggestion was that she just quit worrying about him. That you can only, in the beginning, work on you. When we already don't feel loved ourselves, we can't reach out and get love for ourselves and change the entire direction of our own lives, and at the same time worry about pulling somebody else out of the water at the same time. That's just usually impossible. Which is why, like, when I do couples work, I usually, not always, but as a general rule, I tell couples for at least 2 months to start with, you two won't be speaking to each other at all. None. If you have communications about, you know, who's going to pick up the kids or whatever, you send an email to your partner and say, this long, 5 o'clock, pick up kids at corner. I mean, something brief. Because you've already had so many experiences consistently of hurting each other, you don't know how to say anything loving. Neither of you do. And right now, you need such consistently loving experiences to change the pattern of your own life. You don't need any negative experiences. Or the way I usually say it is, no more wounds. You don't need any more. You already know how to get wounded, so why do more? So she's taken this to heart. And so what she's doing is reaching out, and like she says here, making 6 calls a day and getting love from friends and reading the victim book and doing whatever it takes to get real love in her life. Now, what about her husband? Somebody in group tonight was saying, well, now, what do I do? My wife isn't as interested in real love as I am, blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, if she's not interested, well, I don't. You're thinking too far ahead. The next step is always the same. Donna loves to say that, my wife. The next step is you tell the truth about yourself, you get more loved for yourself from other people, then you practice loving other people. That's the next step. Now what's the step after that? The same step. It's always the next step. So you don't have to wonder. So if you keep doing that with your husband, excuse me, first you do it with yourself, but as you do that, either he will feel the warmth of your love and be attracted to it and change, or he will become increasingly disinterested, uninterested actually, in it, and your paths will diverge so obviously that at some point you'll just be separated. It will just have already happened. It'll be a fait accompli, done. So you don't really have to make a decision about such things. You just keep taking the next step. And the decision about the relationship, that's just going to happen. It'll be so obvious you don't have to think about it. She said, I had several interactions where he was snappy and mean, and it didn't affect me because he didn't do it to me. I felt love and compassion. Oh, this is lovely. We even went to dinner with some friends who I gave the Real Love book to, and they're watching the DVDs, and the husband is a huge fan, and he's now starting a dialogue with my husband. When I shut up and got out of the way, someone else stepped in. Now, see, that's pretty remarkable. And if nothing comes of that, it's okay. I will love him because it helps me. Oh, I hope everybody listening gets this. What she's doing is miraculous. We quit trying to fix other people. We quit waiting for other people to fix us. We do the next thing that it takes to become more loving ourselves. And if other people never respond to our being more loving, we will always be happier. I mean, always. And it will show up in the way we go to work, in the way we function as parents, in the way that we are as spouses. Like I was just telling you, in the way this one guy was functioning as a prisoner in a state prison. You win, period, when you're more loving, no matter what. Tina was describing that the victim book has been very helpful, and that she can't believe how much she acts like and feels like a victim. Who doesn't? I even get physically ill because of the stress of feeling like a victim. So now I get to let that go. I highly recommend, if you don't have a copy of the victim book, let me know, and I'll send you a copy digitally. The victim book, we really believe, is going to take the world by storm. It describes a behavior that is just epidemic. Most of us act like victims so many times in a day. It is so common, it is so socially accepted that victimhood isn't even noticed. And in fact, often applauded. So very common. So you guys' questions are getting actually better and better week by week. So let me encourage you to continue to invite your friends to come. The people who, the group is getting larger, more experienced, which simply means that we're able to go deeper each time. I greatly appreciate your questions. It's the entire fuel for our fire here. So I look forward to seeing you again next week. Greatly appreciate your participation and encourage you to remember, once again, that it's always about real love. And love you all. Have a great week.